Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and boy oh boy, do I have an actual update for you guys regarding that completionist situation me and Carl were covering. Now, you might be wondering, whoa, this is, a pretty big update after literal days when you covered your last big video on this. What could have actually changed? And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just say the bare minimum, but albeit very positive news, is a donation has been made, okay, ladies and gentlemen? One thing that I am actually proud to say here is that, compared to a lot of other stories that I've seen with money that has currently been tossed up in a kerfuffle, usually nobody ever hears about the positive side of the money flow. That just gets sort of thrown out to the wayside. Now, one thing that somebody on Reddit picked up through a Google alert, one thing that I should actually learn how to Google alert again, because it didn't show up for me, was apparently Open Hand Foundation raised the money through internet donations in an effort to find a cure for frontotemporal dementia. Now, this came from a website known as Street Insider. Don't really know what that's all about. Interesting name. But again, Street Insider, the king of Prussia, was it Pennsylvania? Huh. That's an interesting location. The Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, which is AFTD, the nation's leading nonprofit organization helping families affected by frontotemporal degeneration today, announced that it received a $600,000 gift from the Open Hand Foundation. Now, to understand, we've been covering the Open Hand Foundation for literally the last month, me and Carl Jobst, and one of the interesting parts about this investigation was we looked through their public filed IRS records, which showed that they were basically capturing money. This is the most recent actual disclosure to the IRS, the recent 990 PF form, where they ended up having $655,000 by the end of the year. And of course, they were literally contributing nothing of it in payments to charities, grants, or contributions. Now again, throughout the entire life cycle of this charity, at least on paper, they were not actually sending any money over. Me and Carl actually interviewed Gerard, and we had a discussion with him as well about this, and unfortunately, it seemed like our reviewing of the paperwork matched what Gerard has told us, that at least the money is there, but yeah, he found out about it 2022, should have probably donated earlier than that. And ladies and gentlemen, to also understand, he ran an event after knowing that he didn't actually, the money wasn't going anywhere, and still decided to host an event where he mentioned charities by name. Now, obviously, we mentioned charity fraud because the definition of charity fraud actually allows this whole situation fell under the definition of it, okay? Which is not good, legally speaking. So for the longest time, we wondered, is the money there? Remember, we were initially told in that call that, hey, we were planning to send the money as of today, literally as we were calling, which shouldn't have been an issue. Obviously, if we'd have made a first video, they should have probably made a donation right there and then. But unfortunately, it did take weeks for the situation to come out. But thankfully, silver lining, and again, this is the bare minimum, like I said, but again, good foot towards actually making a charitable donation. $600,000 is not a scoffingly low amount of money. That's money that can do some serious life-changing, so it's good to see that they've actually donated the cash here. So they actually donated it on November 29th, which is just before me and Carl made our second round of videos where we actually investigated further into their charities and their charitable events, where it turns out that they had a golf tournament that appears to be raking in some serious money. And of course, we looked further into the filings where it appears reasonably that maybe not all the money appears to properly be reported, which is grounds for any audit to happen. People have wondered if we're just Snitchy McGee over here, but at the end of the day, I pay taxes. Everyone, I assume from the United States here, pays taxes, especially if you work there. We pay taxes to these government bodies, so obviously if there's some malfeasance, allegedly, we should get the government to look into it. That's literally their job, okay? Make the government do its fucking job. Anyways, though, the gift will trigger matching funds for a drug discovery initiative, resulting in $200,000 in additional support for FTD research. So it seems like there's another group that's also putting in $200,000, which I guess is matching up to $800,000. Open Hand is giving $600,000. So what they've actually said is the generous charitable donation will help to accelerate AFTD efforts in drug and research discovery. A portion of the gift will also be dedicated to a small grants program to empower people whose lives have been affected by FTD. Something I actually mentioned in my video, one of my videos, where I talked about, hey, this money could be given to people to assist with nursing costs, right? Families oftentimes give up their jobs just to take care of somebody who's been affected by dementia, because this does become a full-time caretaker job, right? So it's either do you work for a living or do you take care of your flesh and blood? It is a very, very tough choice for lots of families that don't have that financial flexibility. Anyways, though, we are grateful to the Open Hand Foundation, says Susan Dixon, AFTD CEO. Our organization is ideally positioned to ensure that this generous gift directly benefits families affected by FTD. Now, to understand, this is a charity that was mentioned before, and it's kind of interesting because I remember when me and Carl first got our written response from the Open Hand Foundation, they were still trying to examine charities, right? They couldn't find anybody that fit their, worldview, their utopian idea of charities. And after so many years, literally in the last 3 weeks, maybe it's because me and Carl investigated this and brought this to light, that all of this was fast-tracked and the money was eventually given to somebody. Which again shows that those lofty ideals should never have existed. It's such a weird thing to witness. There is no doubt in my mind personally that this money was donated after all because of the immense public pressure that has been put onto them by Gerard's viewers, by people that have watched me and Carl's reporting, and so on and so forth. And of course, no doubt, in my opinion, to actual reports made to the Internal Revenue Service and the California Department of Justice. I'm sure that I'm sure personally that both of these organizations, at least the California DOJ, is involved in the situation as we speak. Anyways, the contribution is a tribute to the memory of my wife, Karen Reed Khalil, who battled temporal degeneration for over 14 years, says Charles Khalil, who's the founder of the Open Hand Foundation. So this is the dad. We are honored to preserve her legacy by supporting continued research on this devastating disease. The Open Hand Foundation is committed to making a meaningful impact, and we believe this donation will contribute significantly to the fight against FTD. If it's one thing Charles and I can agree on, is this donation will actually do a meaningful impact on the fight against FTD. If not directly to fight against the disease, is to assist the families currently suffering from it right now. Karen was diagnosed in 2003. Funds for the Open Hand Foundation gift to AFTD were raised from individual donations through online fundraisers organized by Charles and Karen's son, Gerard Khalil, who is widely known within the gaming community as the Completionist. Oh yeah, Lois? You're not going to talk about what the fuck just happened in the last 3 weeks? The immense public pressure? Any of the reporting that we made? Now, it's interesting that they mentioned that all of these money came from, Gerard Khalil. This money in specific, the funds for the Open Hand Foundation's gift were raised from individual donations during online fundraisers. So again, while they're a private exempt charity, they have at least admitted here that these were individual donations solicited from the public. And again, they mentioned these are fundraisers organized by Gerard Khalil, obviously referring to Indieland. So the fully restricted donation will support 3 AFTD-led efforts. Now, restricted donations, as we know, are donations that are pretty much earmarked for specific causes and charities, and usually, from what I understand, speaking to some charities, this is actually a requirement. They actually want you to donate a significant chunk of money instead of somebody that says, here's a $5,000 restricted donation to fighting brain cancer. Well, first off, $5,000 isn't going to do shit for anything. So that money's just going to sit there legally in an account being untouched because you literally need more money than $5,000. So you need a certain amount of minimum cash in order to send a restricted donation, just so it doesn't sit in a charity's account, literally unable to do anything. But that said, though, $100,000 for drug discovery research, which the Accelerating Drug Discovery collaboration with the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, which seeks to advance and support innovative small molecule and biologic drug discovery programs for FTD. So again, the gift's $100,000 investment will be matched 2-to-1 by the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. So there's some collaboration on the payment there. They got $200,000 for pilot grants, which is seed funding that'll go towards research in neurobiological mechanisms underlying FTD and models for improving the well-being of persons diagnosed, families, and caregivers, and to improve access to equitable, high quality diagnosis, care, support, and research participation options. Okay, so it seems like it's going to, again, researchers, right? So again, the whole idea of when Gerard was like, I want to make sure this money goes to the right place and not to like some doctor's salary, or, you know, by extension, I'm going to assume a researcher's salary as well, because doctors aren't just the only people. There's researchers, there's other people. Obviously, they're going to charge a salary. Nobody works for free, especially in a field as complex as Alzheimer's research, okay? So somebody's salary is rightfully getting paid. That's how research gets done. So then they got $250,000 for Comstock grants to individuals and families. So here's where they basically provide hundreds of individuals and families with small grants up to $500, which will go towards caregiver respite, quality of life, and travel to FTD educational conferences. So caregiver respite is very important. Obviously, like I said before, when you've got families that have to choose between, you know, the fucking paycheck to paycheck life, like the paycheck they need to survive, or taking care of their loved one in such a terrible time. That's obviously, that is probably, in my opinion, one of the most, maybe the most important part of this donation. Obviously, the research, drug discovery, very important, but right now, as of this moment, the families need that money, in my opinion at least. Then they got $50,000 for staff management of these programs, so I assume somebody's going to get hired to make sure the money gets distributed properly, so on and so forth, right? So again, that is basically the press release. And again, these are written by PR agencies, so the Open Hand has Miller PR, and of course, AFTD's got the lead PR. Not surprised with PR agencies, they typically exist for a reason, to make sure you have the cleanest release possible. But it's interesting how they never mentioned any of the controversy at all. I checked the AFTD website as well too, which again, this whole situation is real because, and again, this shows up in their actual official news and events, which again, people are very skeptical given how many lies that we had to trudge through during our investigation, but this is verifiably true, at least on the front page of an actual verified charity. And again, they wouldn't be lying about this. Now, of course, like I said in the beginning, this doesn't entirely exonerate. In fact, if anything, this is the bare minimum that has to be done in this situation. Just because, ladies and gentlemen, when you're raising money for a charity, the expectation is you donate that fucking money to charity, all right? Simple as that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to understand going in forward, this hasn't exactly quelled the recent Reddit right here. And again, I'm using the Reddit for the Completionist as sort of a litmus for his community, because that's his, like, at least the most official looking subreddit right now. And again, over here, you can see that one of the top posts 3 days ago was the AFTD receiving $600,000 from the Open Hand Foundation. And again, a lot of people who will say after 10 years of vetting, they made a donation to the original candidate that they've been lying about donating from day one. Nothing shady there. To understand, there were still multiple other charities that were named that still have to be donated to, and I assume the $600,000 that they're giving obviously isn't the complete amount. There still needs to be an audit done on their charity just for various other income sources to be properly audited, assessed. But the thing about this whole thing that I'm also wondering is the money that is probably raised from something like Indieland 2023, which we haven't even seen reflected in the books, but obviously would be part of their accounting, should be donated, at least hopefully in due time, to the other charities that were named too. Remember, donating to charity, in my opinion, isn't enough. You should be donating to the charities you've listed and named, because remember, if their name was good enough to publicly use, then you should absolutely ethically donate to them. No matter what the amount is, just give money to these charities. Remember, that's what it's all about. One of the actual comments was money was donated a week ago and not announced until Muda and Carl had their new videos out, which, by the way, I want to say is kind of like divine intervention. You bet your ass this was a PR move. At least most people can see through the bullshit. Donating the money after you get caught after a decade doesn't warrant a pat on the back. Absolutely not. But again, at least the money was donated, which again, $600,000 is not money to scoff at. And again, I just want to reiterate by saying that as I cover the story, I also have to cover the positive aspects of it, which again, I'm just glad that the money was also donated. Again, this doesn't exonerate any of the situation. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. And that's why law enforcement or a law enforcement regulating body has to answer those questions for us. There's only so much people can look from public records. Obviously, one of the actual conspiracies for this is one user writes, they just needed a few weeks to secure a loan or liquidate assets to come up with the money to do this. Now, this is highly illegal if true. And personally, at least personally, it doesn't make a lot of sense because when it comes to bank statements, those are typically very, like a bank statement can be subpoenaed by a financial regulating body, right? When I actually like submit my taxes at the end of the year, I make sure to report every dollar of revenue because obviously it gets sent to my bank account. My bank account has exact ins and outs of all the money that has ever been sent into me. So obviously I'm going to report that appropriately. If this conspiracy theory is true and the California DOJ or the IRS are investigating, if it turns out on the balance sheet that like 2 weeks ago or a week ago that they just had $600,000 or whatever sum of money just magically inserted and then that money was then sent out to this charity, that's going to draw some serious eyeballs over to them. There needs to be a full financial accounting. This would not only be illegal because you're trying to conceal a crime, but it would also be incredibly fucking simple to debunk by a financial regulating body. One of the comments was, I think if we're trying to make this all clear, it's this. Gerard lied for a good while that this money was going somewhere and wasn't. That's bad enough. The real problem is we have no information on any bits or direct donations to his streaming platforms, and it's fair to say there's a few thousand there. Very weird that the 2023 stream money wasn't used here, but maybe he needs to wait another decade to push that out for whatever reason. Again, there's a lot of cynicism in this situation, and again, given Gerard's own statements with us on a call, it definitely is reasonable to expect people to be pretty pissed about the situation. One of the actual moments was they donated the rounded down lower bound of Carl's initial findings, quick lump sum, instead of distributing to say any of the charities he used for legitimization for years on end, which is true. AFTD was not the only mentioned charity, just in time for the follow-ups to uncover myriad questions about more missing money, which, again, looking at their golf tournament, looking at a bunch of other places, there is, at least, in my opinion, income or revenue that should be reassessed by an auditing body. But that said, ladies and gentlemen, the silver lining here, at least, is for people who are affected by Alzheimer's, families suffering through it, at least there's $600,000 more in the pot as we speak that is currently going towards good causes. Look, at the end of the day, there is a net positive in this situation, right? Compared to other situations that I've investigated and looked into, the money always is never there. At least here, $600,000 has been sent over, which, again, is a lot better than nothing. But that said, though, it still doesn't exonerate. This is the bare minimum that can be done. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that there is an investigating body that will come up with a proper answer to the situation, one that me and Carl cannot find because we are not IRS agents, we are not federal agents. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this still needs a lot of answers in the situation. We still need a lot of answers. A lot of questions need to be answered, sorry. And at least, silver lining, money was donated, but now it's time to see what the full scope of the situation looks like. That being said, though, did not expect to make this update, but thankfully there was some good news in all this. That said, though, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.